All right, folks. Happy Wednesday. I see a few of you checking in already. If you're here live, let me know. Comment in the chat. If you're in the Zoom itself, let me know where you're checking in from, that you can hear and see me in the chat function in Zoom. And if you're over on Facebook, scroll down. There ought to be a comment with a link to the Zoom. So, excuse me, if you're watching in real time in Facebook, come join us over in the Zoom so that way you can engage with us in the chat, because it's quite difficult to monitor both. And so if you're commenting over on Facebook, we won't necessarily see it in time to address those concerns and have you kind of help us guide the discussion the way we like to here in the Zoom. So I'll give it another minute as folks check in. Evan, Ed, Keith, I see you guys. Thanks for checking in. Ed, where are you checking in from? I see that you're here. Keith, North Jersey, us too. Yeah, let me know where you're checking in from as you guys hop on. Hey, Andre, what's up, buddy? Long Island, we got some, we have some folks in the program from Long Island. One, in fact, doing a monster at a level to a split out in Garden City. So I don't know, Long Island is clearly long, right? It's big. So I don't know how close you are to that, but yeah, let's see Salem. Okay. Making sure we are streaming in the group, which we are, and then we're ready to go. Long Island is long. Yeah, man. That's why they call it that. Seacliff, 15 minutes from Garden City. Sweet, man. Well, maybe we'll link you up with our good friend Kyle out there, and you can go on a site visit with him and see what a $250,000 net profit rehab looks like, because that's what that one's modeling out to, and he's crushing on that. So Kyle, if you watch this back, shout out, buddy. Hey, what's up, Alice? I see you. We haven't talked in a while. Alice checking in from Florida. And let me jump in. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, and I want to walk you guys through a handful of things today. And so you're here because of new construction, right? Tear downs, scrape the dirt, infill development for the most part. There's, those that are checking in from all over the country. The model might look a little bit different. The core elements are the same. You just may not necessarily need to scrape dirt, right? You may have dirt at your disposal where you guys are, but in our market and in a lot of these very competitive markets, you're looking to do infill development, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? You're finding opportunities to fill in. And sometimes that's a, excuse me, sometimes that's just a double lot, right? That a house sits on, and you buy it and you subdivide, or you already buy it subdivided with plans in place or shovel ready. Other times it means buying a single lot and scraping the dirt, demoing the existing structure to make room for the new home. So I'm going to show you a couple of those. Bear with me as I share my screen. And so you'll see a video here, but we're going to jump to not the other video of me. You don't need to see more of me. Let me hide my controls. And so if, and we bring the chat up as well. I'm going to make sure that I can keep up with the chat. Let me know if you're seeing my screen before I jump in. I don't want to start sharing and then come to find that you can't actually see the screen. Okay, we have confirmation. Great. All right, guys, thanks for your patience. All right, let's hit it. So what you're looking at are a bunch of different examples of new construction projects. Some the dirt came scraped, others we scraped the dirt. So remember, we're going to talk about those like three elements here today. So here's what it looks like when you're sourcing. This is the finished project. So in this case, right, this is what we ultimately built here. I want to show you what was here beforehand. And this was a functional, like a perfectly fine split level home with a 1-car garage on a great lot in a great town. The challenge was that this was not optimized. A lot of times when you come in and you scrape dirt and you go new construction, it's because the existing structure is not optimized, right? Like there's an opportunity to do better there. And so in this case, the opportunity presented itself. In fact, we bought this from an investor that had already taken down the existing structure and tapped on the project. And so we stepped in and stood this up, right? So there's one scenario where you kind of come in and the dirt's already there. It's kind of ready for you. You just go get plans. Sometimes plans are already in hand and you're buying it with the approved plans, even better, assuming they drew the right house, okay? Here's another example of a dated one, right? What you'll see here is that this is an oversized lot. It's not quite a double lot, but it's clearly way too big of a lot for this size house. And in this market, again, highest and best was to build a much bigger house on this lot. This town warranted it. This lot in particular commanded it. And so that's what we ultimately did. And if you jump way ahead, you can see the new construction home that we stood up, clearly a very different product, right, than what was there. So you could see how what was there was undersized and it was not optimized. It was not highest and best. So we went in and created highest and best. And you do that based on market research, right? The market's going to tell you what it can bear. And when you see something like this, an undersized house like this that we bought, if I remember right, for $225, and an opportunity to build new construction and sell for $800, if I remember right, that's what you do, right? And if I remember right, the numbers here, $365 acquisition for just the dirt, scraped already, no house to take down, and 1.1 million ARV out sale on this, right? And now I'm going to take you through one step by step and actually show you the process. Here's before, and you'll see this one. You'll see all the steps in this one. Again, undersized house on a, I wouldn't say this was an oversized lot. This was a typical lot. This lot is very much like your standard 50 by 150 grid style lot in this neighborhood. So it's not, this is not a double lot. This isn't something that like warrants anything crazy. And so that's why you see what we ultimately built was nothing crazy. Here it is in progress. You see a lot of the branding, right? Like, and I'll show you more of that as we kind of unpack this deal step by step. And then the finished home, the numbers here, purchase for this, and I'm going to show you this HUD, 100,000 or 95,000, and then out sale 500,000, right? So just so you have some numbers going in. And so we don't need to see that. What we need is the purchase side, PDF and HUD. So bear with me. I'm going to walk you through this step. So remember that this is our subject property. What we're most concerned about is where the house kind of sits on the lot and what the house looks like. So here you could see small undersized house on a decent sized lot, like highest and best is to take this thing down. And, you know, how do you necessarily know that? Well, the thing's crumbling in on itself, right? It's not optimized like the way it's placed on the lot. This neighborhood in particular is gentrifying and improving. So it's not, you couldn't necessarily just build on top of this and get the highest and best, get that like out sale ARV. And so this is one of those cases where rather than build up on the existing, which it had a bad structure anyway, this bad foundation wasn't going to allow for that. It had like a 6-foot basement that was crumbling in on itself. So, you know, we came to the realization quickly that this had to go. And so that's what we ultimately did, took this down. And now I'll walk you through the steps. So here's what the survey looks like. The original survey, right? This is what was provided to us. The deal found us via a wholesaler who knew already that this was a teardown. So kudos to them for knowing that and presenting us the deal in that fashion, right? A lot of times those deals will find you and they won't necessarily know that they're teardowns, right? It's sometimes a savvier agent will, a wholesaler should, but they don't always, right? They'll assume that you can go in and rehab the existing structure and they'll have it modeled that way. So this is why it's going to benefit you to understand like, hey, what's highest and best here? What can I actually do with this? If this lot and if this town in particular, this lot in this town commands new construction, like I can actually pay more, right? I can pay more than everybody else who's going to go in and just renovate it. And so that wasn't the case here. We were fortunate that I would say the wholesaler was fortunate and wise to bring the deal already modeled as new construction. So that's where the deal came from. We got a revised survey to find out exactly where the house sits on the lot. You can never trust those old surveys. And when you go and ultimately take those surveys to the town, to the architect to get these drawings approved, you're going to need new field measurements. And so if you go back and look old survey, new survey, you'll see these measurements are dated. They're under 12 feet. And you can see on the new survey, there's 13 feet, right? Like, so never trust the original survey. Trust but verify. Like, don't even trust it. Just get a new survey, which you'll have to do anyway to prepare the architecturals that you ultimately submit. We'll jump into the architecturals in a minute. Let me first just show you the HUD. So like I said, 95K purchase and ultimately cash to close 98,661. So keep that in mind. We'll come back. We'll circle back to these numbers, but I want to share these numbers with you guys so you can start to wrap your head around what these look like. This is a very small deal in comparison to the other two you just saw, but it's clean. The numbers are simple and straightforward. And it's very indicative of what new construction could look like if you're scraping dirt or doing infill type development in your market. And I'll field questions as we go. John, how much does it cost to knock down and cart away the old structure? This one was 13,000, if I remember right. On the ones we're currently doing, those numbers are more like 18,000. So this is a while ago. And so for the numbers to have gone up only that much, I think it was 13, 16, 18. So numbers have increased, but not crazy. Not what you might think given like what inflation's been doing. Evan, how do you know if the house is undersized for the lot specifically? Is it just smaller than the nearby homes? Yeah, typically it will be smaller than the houses on the street, but a lot of times we'll let like the town, the market in general kind of dictate. And then we'll look like if it's the ugliest house on one of the nicest streets, then yeah, like it's going to be pretty obvious. But if it's starting to happen, say near downtown, and it's kind of finding its way into the outskirts of a particular town, you might be 2 or 3 blocks away from that gentrification. It's not quite there yet, but you know it's coming. So you might not see it on that street, but you might see it in that little like pocket, that little subset of the neighborhood. If so, that already should tell you, hey, highest and best here is going to be to tear this down and build new. So Keith, is the date you bought in 2016? I don't know, 2016, 2018? We'll go back and look. And the appraisal will be dated. That'll tell us 2018. So, and I'm showing you the appraisal to show you that our lender came in and said this new construction project would sell for 455. We ultimately sold for more than that, and I'll show you, but you could see here's us purchasing at 95. Here's the lender telling us it's going to bring 455. And that's what appraisals, you know, that's what lenders will do with their third-party appraisers. They'll come in and they'll undershoot your ARV. We knew we were going to get more. Ultimately, we were proven right, but that's not, you know, that's not important now. I want you guys to kind of just see, okay, well, the wholesaler brings us the opportunity. We could have found it ourselves, right? We didn't. We were, it would have been very possible for that house to have been on our deal machine list and be getting mailed to. It wasn't. It happened to come via the wholesaler. So a lot of different ways you could do that. It could come via wholesale. It could come via a listing on MLS with an agent. It could come via direct mail, right? Like we could have been mailing to that house. In fact, after we bought this house, we realized there's more opportunity in town and started mailing the rest of that town. So that's where the deal found us. How did we fund it? Well, we borrowed private money to acquire the property at $95,000 and then went to a community bank to borrow the balance via a refi. So I'm going to jump around now, but stay with me, right? We're working from purchase into the build into the sale. So we're going to kind of flow through this chronologically. So I'm going to paint this picture for you visually. And at the same time, just imagine this timeline, right? This 12-month timeline. And so here's the refi. Like I said, a private money lender came in and provided us the funding for the purchase. So the $100,000 came from friends and family, a coworker. And I actually don't recall who it even came from at this point, but someone funded the purchase. Then we went behind that and went to a local community bank whose mandate, by the way, is to lend in their towns, right? In the markets that they bank for, raise the money to do the project. and then went to work on the construction, doing draws from the community bank lender over the course of 12 months from close to close on this deal. So we'll jump into the next phase. And I'll show you now what was ultimately drawn and how it sits on the lot. And now you can see the difference. And I know that this may be small on a lot of your screens. I don't know how many of you are watching on desktop versus mobile. I hope you're on desktop. If you are, you'll be able to see the original, how the original house sits on the lot. A super small, narrow, one-story dwelling with a crumbling basement. And the newly drawn house, how it now sits on the lot, right? Significantly bigger home. It's got a 2-car wide driveway, a 2-car front-facing garage, and I'll show you the actual architecturals. You can see we got rid of the garage and the shed in the rear. And here's the drawn house, right? On slab, a mother-daughter style, right? This is like, how did we know to build this? How do we know how many square feet to build? Well, we take the lot, we figure out how much house the lot will allow for, and then we look at what the market will bear, right? If the lot happens to be 7,500 square feet, we could build on 35% of it. That's 2,600 foot of house, which we ultimately built here. If you look here, you'll see that. And then you want to go to the market and look at comps. Work with an agent if you're not an agent yourself, if you're not that familiar with the market, and then look at the comps and say, all right, the lot allows for 7,500, 2,600 feet, excuse me. Like, should we build 2,600? Can the market bear it? Or are we overbuilding, right? These are the kinds of questions you want to be asking yourself as you're preparing to take this to the architect to have this drawn. So here's what the front elevation looks like. Here's what the basement level, because a mother-daughter is a step up, step down style house. So you could see that first step down. And then here you could see the second floor, the step up. And here are the other 3 elevations, right? Again, there's not much going on here, and that's for a reason, right? What this particular town could bear and what the market dictated we would build, we built. We weren't trying to get fancy, right? This doesn't look like this, right? Like, clearly this is a different house in a different market trading at 1.1 million. There's a reason that we don't build this house. Although this house wouldn't have fit, it wasn't big by much. This house wouldn't have fit on the lot, but assuming it could have, it didn't make sense. What made sense was to build this, right? So, and again, that's going to be market dependent, and the market's going to tell you what it can bear, and you build what it can bear and no more. And so again, connect with a local agent if you're not one, who's an expert and can tell you, hey, here's what we would build here. Here's what I could sell here when it's done, right? Keith, do architects help you with that, knowing how much house to put on the lot? Yeah, well, what I would say is go to them with an idea. Like, they can tell you how much house the lot can bear by looking at the zoning, by doing that math I quickly did, right? This is a 50, I'll do it with you really quickly. This is a 50 by 150 lot, right? 50 by 150, 7,500 square feet of lot. You could cover 35% of the lot in this town. That means you could build 2,665 or whatever that works out to. Now you go to the architect with that. The architect will verify that is the case. And then you will have spoken to your agent. You will have done your research, and you'll know, listen, just because we can build that, we probably shouldn't. So then you'll kind of work with your architect to determine what's the max square footage we want to create here. And you've likely done all this like in the modeling phase anyway, right? By the time you get to an architect, you've already done all this due diligence. And so now let's jump into some these architecturals we've just kind of looked at together. Here's what we wound up drawing and building. And now I'm going to quickly take you through the build. I want you to see what this looks like during the execution process. So here's the house coming down. I'm going to take my time with these because I think these are helpful, because there's a lot of images here. And like I said, we're kind of chronologically taking you through the new construction timeline and seeing these images and thinking, okay, like clearly the house has to come down first. then this has to happen, then this has to happen. So follow the order of operations as we go through this. So just a bunch of photos of the house coming down. We've actually got a video of this as well. Excuse me. Here's the water line. We're jumping out of order a bit. These are the posts, the columns holding up the second floor in the garage. That first floor walkout to the back, front elevation coming together, right? It's starting to look like the drawing now. If we jump back to the drawing, you can see how we're building to what was drawn. Framing on that first floor, you can see it's on slab here. The mechanical room, second floor framed out. This big open foyer in the front, if you go back again, that's this area right here, right? This upstairs. More frame. This is the house before it's roofed and wrapped. There it is in framing stage. So we're actually going backwards in time. Block work, the slab, before slab inspection, balance of the demo, some site work and some grading. All this happening, footing forms, right? Waiting for the footing to be poured. Some more signage, a track pad, right? Something you'll want to be mindful of. Your contractor will want to make sure that they've got a track pad down so you're not tracking dirt off the site into the public streets where you can get fined for it. Footings, cement being poured, the water line, the underground plumbing. Like I said, we built this on a slab, no basement, because the basement that was there was crumbling in on itself. It made no sense to create more basement on a house like this, right? We're maxing out the square footage already. So why would we put a basement in? The market didn't warrant a basement. We wouldn't have been compensated for creating a basement. And so again, you work with your agent and your architect to make sure you know all that. And so you're looking at some underground plumbing. You're looking at the water line, the connection to the water line at the curb, the backfill. And that's it on like the during. So again, I'll take you through the timeline. Acquisition, like on the purchase side, the deal finds us via a wholesaler. We raise private money to buy it. We raise community bank financing to build it. We work with the agent and the architect to figure out what to actually put there. You're looking at it. This is what we came up with. And then tear down the first structure, right? That's the scrape part we talked about. And then start standing up the new structure. That's what you've just kind of seen and walked through with us. And now let me show you what ultimately comes of the house. What style home is that, Keith? It's a mother-daughter. The idea with those styles of homes in a neighborhood like this is it's generational living. So we did our research. We figured out, okay, here's how many square feet we can build. Now, what type of house, right? Like just because we could put 2,600 square feet doesn't mean we should make a 2,600 square foot, like single story ranch, right? Like we had to figure that out. And so we worked with our agent to determine that there was demand for a mother-daughter style, right? Where there's generational living. The in-laws live on that apartment, for a lack of better term, behind the garage, like behind these garages here, what you're looking at. This is its own self-contained unit. And so it's an in-law suite. It's got a little kitchenette right here. It's got a kitchenette. It's got washer and dryer. And so it's set up so you enter the front door here, and then you can step down to its own little apartment necessarily, and then up to another equally sized unit. Actually, upstairs is bigger because it's got the room over the garages versus the first floor loses the room for the garages. So that's what style home it is. Igor, how did you determine to work with this specific architect? How are their services billed? Flat fee based on square footage, hourly, percent of project cost. So different architects build differently. So the answer to that part is it depends. Like, will it be flat fee, hourly, percent of project cost? I don't see a lot of percent of project cost, but I know that there's still architects that do build that way. This was a flat fee. This architect, we've worked with them in the past, and so we knew what we wanted. A lot of times architects that work with builders and investors and developers have these like builder friendly type plan sets that have no frills. So what you're looking at is a 4-page plan set. Like these are meant to go to the town, get approved, and get built. There's no frills here. There's nothing fancy here. There's no window schedule. There's no plumbing riser. There's none of that stuff that you would pay premiums for to build a house. Again, I'll keep jumping back and forth to this house, but to build a house like this, right, you would expect a different plan set, right? You might expect to pay more for a plan set that's more detailed, even to build this house. A plan set that's a little bit more detailed, more in depth. For a house like this, very straightforward. You're looking at it, right? It's 4 pages. So, and so that's how you can expect to be billed for architectural fees. And just know the simpler the project, the more like rubber stampable it is, the more inexpensive you can expect the plans to be. And now let's jump to what everybody wants to know. So here's where we sold. So if you're following along, 500K, we paid 95 with closing costs. It came to just about 100. That's a 400K spread in there to build that house. You'll also recall that the lender, our community bank partner, appraised the house at 455. So we oversold by nearly 50,000, and it cost us 100 a foot to build the house. So if you go back to the plan set, you'll see 2611 square feet. We spent 265 to build the house at the time. And so you can do the math, right? You can back out the 265 and the 95 purchase from the 500 ARV from the sale price. And that'll give you about what our gross margin was. Remember that there's associated selling costs, right? That house the commissions had to be paid. There had to be transfer taxes. There were a lot of associated selling costs. So, but gross margin, that's a good deal. That's a really healthy margin on a new construction this size, right? On a new construction at $1 million, like ARV, you would expect to make more. You wouldn't want to take the risk and put that kind of money to work to make 100K. Whereas on a project this size, with a lot of OPM, right? There's 95 or 98K from a private money lender. There's 265 from a community bank. Like, so your cash on a deal like this is pretty much infinite, right? You're not spending any of your own money. You're doing everything with OPM. So the 100K or so that you make on this deal, there's no numerator, right? It's or no denominator, I should say. It's 100 over 0. Like you put $0 in and you make 100. So if you do that math, that cash on cash is infinite. And so I'll show you a few more images of the finished home and encouraging you to chime in with questions. Hopefully going chronologically and talking through the timeline is helpful, so you can start to visually think through these projects the next time you see something that looks like it's a possible tear down, or it could be an opportunity to fill in some land in your backyard. Let me just quickly run through these images and show you what the design, the aesthetic, right? Like, again, architects draw houses, designers design houses, investors and developers and GCs, we build houses. So we had to execute on the plan and take the architect's plan, take the designer's design, bring all those things together to create this cohesive end product. And you can see it's a little better than builder grade finishes, right? Like, it was designed accordingly. We knew our ARV was 500, so we didn't get carried away. You don't see the type of stuff you might expect to see in a super high-end $1 million+ home, but you still see nice red oak hardwood floors, right? You still see decent looking base and casing, right? These windows aren't picture framed, they're actually cased, right? This is the kind of trim spend you might not necessarily expect on a 500K product, right? You might not expect this barn door setup or this like designer fan, but that's why when we do these projects, they stand out, right? These inset niches with 2 shelves, these aren't like budget killers, but these are definitely like kind of showstopper features. This blue, right? This aesthetic is definitely what helped us stand out. What I can also share is that this house has since sold again during the COVID boom for something in like the mid to high 6s. So things have gone on to just continue to appreciate, and this house has held its value, right? It's sold again. But you can see the finish. It's got that designer flair. And we did all that for 100 a foot. Let me jump into the questions. I see a lot of questions. I just want to get through these images just to kind of help paint the picture of what's possible. So super clean. We'll leave the kitchen up. Big kitchen, great kitchen. So what's the questions? Marsha, what price range would you say an architect charges for plans to build new construction, 3,000 feet? I think that's going for 6,500. Like what we would have paid for this, it's probably twice that. There's no architect doing a plan set for less than 6,500. I feel like that's the new baseline number. So I would think expect to spend that, and you may get like near 9,500, somewhere between 6,500 and 9,500 are the kind of numbers we're hearing kicked around for builder-friendly architects, right? If you're going to a retail architect, you can expect 9,500 to 12,500. Keith, thank you. Beautiful work. I appreciate that. Do you use, Igor, do you use a permit expediter or deal with building department directly? Awesome question, man. And so let the town dictate, right? Like, are you building in a town where expediters are expected, where like the only way to get things done is to pay an expediter? We rarely work in those types of towns. And even when we do, because we've got such a tight process, we have our project manager drive the submissions. And by the way, those that are in our accelerator program or have been through our Kajabi, like, that we break down that process for you. So you can do that yourself. You and your team can do that, and in turn bank that 10K that you would pay an expediter. So, I mean, that pays for the program in and of itself. For those of you that are in it, you know what I'm talking about. John, what inspections and nuances do you need to account for versus an add a level? That's probably its own call, but honestly, on the front end, there's about 10 to 12 different steps that you need to account for versus coming in and doing some sort of an add a level or addition type project. Things like a pest abatement, an environmental survey, utility disconnects. Some of this you saw photos of, right? Utility disconnect, you're paying COA fees. You're having to do that track pad we showed you a photo of. Soil, you're displacing a lot of soil. So the soil conservationist is going to want to see, where are you moving this soil to? In our case, we took a basement out and filled it in. In some cases, you're digging a basement. And in that case, where's that dirt going, right? That's something that they're worried about. They want to make sure it's not going out of county usually. So a lot of different nuances, but far too many to unpack on this quick call. But happy to go deeper on that on a future call. If there's enough interest, we could spend just the entire call on the new construction milestone template, because we've got new construction, we've got cosmetic rehab, we've got gut rehab, we've got addition, add a level, we've got all these different milestone templates. And so that's the most robust one, obviously, because of the new construction stuff. What was the time frame? Keith, 12 months close to close. I looked it up just before we got on the call. So those HUDs are dated 12 months apart. Have you used a single lender for purchase and building, similar to purchase and renovate lending, one loan for all of it with no payments during the 12-month term? We have. That's ambitious. I would say the reason we did this way is because we knew we would get really favorable terms from a community bank if we could buy the property outright. So a lot of times what we'll do on projects this size is we'll go to our private money lenders and we'll raise 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, buy the property outright with that lender's monies. And now the bank can come in and lend against that for the construction. That's an ideal way for us to do it, because we'll pay our private money lender 8 or 10%, and then we'll go to a community bank and pay them 4 or 5%, as opposed to going to one lender the way you're suggesting, where you might pay 2 points and 10% or 2 and 12, or right. So our blended cost of construction, our blended financing costs are a lot lower if we do this, and it's an extra step. So of course you got to factor that time in, but that's been really helpful for us on these types of deals. What do I think it would cost now to build if it was 100 a foot back then? Well, depends where you are, Keith. I forget if you messaged where you were. I think you might have said Salem if you're in Jersey. So those numbers vary, but we're still seeing folks build at 135 a foot. We're seeing folks build north of 235 a foot, right? It really all depends. Different product, different finishes. So a house like this should be buildable for 130 a foot all day. I wouldn't expect to spend more than that. Same property. Okay. Yeah. Same property. Keith. Yeah. I don't see a world where it costs more than 130 a foot to do this with mostly builder grade finishes, and some designer fixtures, right? Like what you're looking at. These are very straightforward. Like there isn't much here that would break the bank, right? So yeah, I think that's fair. And those numbers still work, right? You can still go back, do that math and figure out a way to make this deal work with the new ARVs. So something we've talked about on our Tuesday night accelerator calls is that the deal is the same deal, even years later. In fact, we went back and used our very first at-a-level project 7 years ago and looked at what we purchased it for, looked at what our cost of construction was, and looked at our exit. Went back and looked at the deal we're doing in the same town 7 years later, and we're paying more. It's costing more to build it, but we're selling for more. And all the numbers are exactly the same. It's still like 40% of ARV to purchase, 40% of ARV to renovate, then and now. And then that 20% is your margin. So we've done that math on those calls, and sure enough, it models out the same way. So think about it. It's the same deal. The same deal 7 years later. This is the same deal 4 years later, whatever it is, same deal. Clearly, you'll pay a little more to get in, you'll pay more to build, but you're selling for a lot more as well. So the margins are still there. And that's it, guys. I'll jump out of this screen share. I hope that was helpful, and you've gotten to kind of like see one of these through from start to finish, like chronologically. What does it look like? Where does the deal come from? How do you know what you're looking at when it finds you or when you find it, right? If you're doing outbound marketing versus inbound organic, then how do you put the funds together on these smaller deals? You would go private money, right? First, and then you go hard money behind it. Or in our case, on this one, we went community bank. We knew that the community bank had a mandate to lend in town, which most community banks do. And we knew that they had an appetite for new construction, especially in this price range. So it was helpful to know that. And the only way you're going to know that is if you're having conversations with loan officers at your community bank, which if you're not, you should be. So get started, right? Like start having conversations with them. So when an opportunity like this finds you, you don't have to go and get to know them, right? Like don't have to get ready, just be ready, because you might not have time to get ready. If you're bidding against someone like us or some of our students who already have these relationships in place, like you're going to be hard pressed to go to a community bank, start building a relationship with a loan officer, get them comfortable enough with you, never mind the document requests, so that way you could write the offer with their support. Like that's just not going to happen in enough time when you're bidding in competition. So just be mindful of that. And so that's how we funded it. You saw how we did the zoning, how we did the architecturals, how we determined what we were going to put there, then how we ultimately built it step by step. You know what it cost to build it. You saw the finished product and you know what it sold for, and you know all those margins. So hopefully that's helpful and you guys can execute on a similar project in your market. A couple more questions just came in. Marsha, what retail price range do you recommend a designer be hired to do a new construction? So I think you already know the answer to this one because you've been at our events, but we have designers do all the houses. Honestly, at this point, we're overwhelmed, right? With decision fatigue. Just we have to decide so many things. Like, what am I wearing? Like all these things that we're like, what are we eating? There's just like so many decisions to be made. So for me, it's a line item in our P&L. We know we're going to design it. We know we're going to stage it. We just have all that factored in, and we just account for that and put those monies aside. And so it just affords us the freedoms, like the bandwidth to manage the project and be just effective and drive the timelines, make sure we're getting the best deals, deals in dollars, right? That's where we want to be focused. So yeah, I would say if a deal doesn't have a budget for a designer and a stager, it's too thin of a deal anyway. So that's our thought on that. Keith, regular bank loan officer or commercial? So the loan officer is going to be somebody, like I said, their mandate is to lend into the community. So they're that like guy or gal that's going to be at the supermarket. They're going to be like actively shaking hands. You'll know who your community like lender partner is right away. Like when you walk into the bank, that's the face that you see all over town. That's the person who's like mandated to be in the town, to be at the scout like master meetings, right? Like that's the person who's like making and building those relationships. And so depending on who that, like where you are, what you're like, what market you're in, who that person is, as soon as you figure that out, that's the person you're building a relationship with. And then they're the ones that are going to, in fact, we were on a call today. This is so timely, where we spoke to a lender at a community bank in a new market that we're forging into. And any loan between $0 and $2.5 million, he has authority to approve. 2.5 to 5 has to go up one level. 5 to 10 has to go up another level. 10 to 15 goes up another level. Ultimately, 15 million and above has to go to the board. So this community bank, this loan officer in particular, has that authority. And so that's who you're going to be talking to. That's why this is such a relational game. Build that relationship with that lender. And then when you bring him the deal, he's already like, he or she's already told you what their appetite is for these types of deals. You find that deal, you take it right to them. They say, yeah, like we got your back. You could confidently write this offer because we'll fund this deal all day. And now you're in a really good spot to do deals just like this one. Monica, one last question. Do you have a dedicated admin or bookkeeper who specializes in building or real estate for expense tracking, milestone templates, et cetera? Yeah, the answer is yes. The first person, you guys, if you've been on these calls before, you've heard me say, like, stop touching paper, like fire yourself. The first role in your business that you need to fire yourself as is admin, office manager, executive assistant, call it whatever you want. Like any of that, you need to, unless that's your like unique giftedness and you get great joy from operating in QuickBooks and building out worksheets. Some of us are twisted like that, but if that is the case, then of course, do it. If not, then quickly look to delegate that responsibility and then elevate in your business. Delegate and elevate. Fire yourself as admin, fire yourself as office manager, as executive assistant, hire someone who's uniquely positioned to do that work. They'll clearly do it better than you because it's what they're built for. And then that's who's going to do a lot of the stuff we're talking about today. That's the reason that so much of what I'm showing you even exists, right? That's not me, right? That's our office manager who's infinitely better at this than me, building all this out, keeping all this at the ready. So when I do have these calls, I can like weave this whole story together for you. We have all that, right? Most people don't have a single image of the first 20 houses they flipped. And that's a huge miss, right? Like once it's gone, it's gone. For us, we were fortunate that we had somebody in the office that was very diligent and was thorough and was documenting all of this. Like I'm going back years. I'm showing you our journey building a new construction home 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. We've got it all. So yeah, I know it's a long-winded answer, Monica, but hopefully that's helpful. One more question. Are the larger lenders not willing to do loans right now for new construction like Chase? So I don't know for certain, but anecdotally, the evidence and like kind of the rumors, yeah, Chase is out. The big, what do they call them? SIBs, SIB, like systematically insured banks, the Chase, the Wells, Capital One, whatever the four SIBs are, the big four, they're the systematically like too big to fail banks. Like they don't have an appetite for the type of stuff that your community bank does. So I know that's kind of like an anecdotal response to that question, but that's been my experience. And so, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But again, like we're trying to do a lot of this with these local partners. So if we can find a community bank like we did in this case, all the better for us, right? Because they're mandated to deploy those monies back into that community. And that's a true partnership that we can build on. Whereas with a Chase or like a Wells, we're just going to be a loan number, right? Like we're just going to be a number in the system. So thanks, guys. Thanks for the engagement today. So many awesome questions. We nailed it to the minute. So hopefully this was helpful and happy to go deeper on the new construction side. We got a couple of questions in our accelerator about this. We built this up. with the hopes of bringing you guys value. And we're happy to go deeper if there's still like that desire, right? So let us know, and comment in Facebook below this video if you're watching this after the fact, and let us know what you thought. And yeah, again, happy Wednesday. Go crush the balance of this week. And I'll see you guys here next Wednesday for another live training.